I have the honor to introduce Dr. Javier Cabrera Guerra. His theme is Social Determinants of Health in the Elderly. Physician with specialization in geriatrics and hospital management in the Pontifical Javerian University in Bogotá. Master's candidate of Health Leadership and Policy in Seniors Care in the University of British Columbia in Canada. Re-elected President of the Colombian Association of Gerontology and Geriatrics. Member of the Board of Directors of the Colombian Association of Scientific Society. Public Policy Leader of the Colombian Alliance for Bone Health. Medical Director of an institution that provides comprehensive services to the elderly and the geriatrician in 2 other hospital institutions. Graduated professor and founder of a graduate program in geriatrics in Colombia. Defender of the human rights of the elderly.
Good afternoon. Hello to all. Thank you to Margarita Murghieri for this presentation. It has been an honor to be here with you today. And a special thanks to Dr. Jose Ricardo Jauregui and for the academic committee for taking into account this matter in this important event. I am going to speak about the social determinants of health in the elderly. The notion that health is socially determined and that one's health depends on the society in which one lives is not new and can be found since Hippocrates, who considered health to be a state of bodily balance that could be achieved through behavioral and medicinal actions. In the past century, there were greater advances in this matter, but today I have brought to you a more recent perspective about this. This will be our objectives. First, we are going to make a review about social determinants of health. Then we are going to make an approximation about how is their impact in the way we age. And afterwards, I am going to make some comments about what we can do next. In this century, the social determinants of health were first defined by the World Health Organization, which in the 57th World Health Assembly, Director General Dr. Lee Jong-wook announced the creation of the Commission on Social Determinants of Health. This commission was launched in March 2005, aimed to provide guidance to member states by gathering evidence on social determinants and ways to overcome health inequities. The commission consisted of 19 members chaired by Professor Sir Michael Marmot from London, and so from 2005 to 2009, they were presented as the structural determinants and conditions of daily life responsible for a major part of health inequities between and within countries. They include the distribution of power, income, goods, and services, and the circumstances of people's lives, such as their access to healthcare, schools, and education, their conditions of work and leisure, and the state of their housing and environment. The term social determinants is thus shorthand for the social, political, economic, environmental, and cultural factors that greatly affect health status. Such health inequities are not inevitable. Instead, they mostly point to policy failure, reflecting inequities in daily living conditions and in access to power, resources, and participation in society. In 2008, this final report from the Commission starts by a warning that social justice is a matter of life and death. Hear this: social justice is a matter of life and death. It affects the way people live, their consequent chance of illness, and their risk of premature death. So, the conditions in which people live and die are in turn shaped by political, social, and economic forces, and these health inequalities arise because of the circumstances in which people grow, live, work, and age, and the systems put in place to deal with illness. So for our matter today, please let's focus in 2 words here. First, these inequalities are avoidable, and second, the way we age is important. So in this report from 2008, this commission makes 3 main recommendations. First, improve daily living conditions. Second, tackle the inequitable distribution of power, money, and resources. And third, measure and understand the problem and assess the impact of action. Finally, this commission calls on the WHO and all governments to lead global action on the social determinants of health with the aim of achieving health equity. In 2010 in England, this graph is published by the Marmot Review. Here we can see that disadvantage starts before birth and accumulates throughout life. Then action to reduce inequalities must start before birth and be followed through the life of the child. And for this reason, giving every child the best start in life is the highest priority recommendation. Meanwhile, there is much that can be done to improve the lives of health of people who have already reached the school, working age, and beyond. Also, there are very important the services that promote the health, well-being, and independence of older people, and in so doing, prevent or delay the need for more intensive or institutional care. It makes a significant contribution to ameliorating health inequalities. For example, the Partnerships for Older People projects have been shown to be cost-effective in improving life quality. The Commission on Social Determinants of Health was set up by the World Health Organization, and they were tasked with summarizing the evidence about what factors are affecting populations' health and what governments and public health can do about it. In this review of different frameworks for understanding the social determinants of health, there are specific theories of the social production of health, and there is a model of the mechanisms of health inequality made by Professor Finn Dideriksen. In this model, the social context, including its health policies and other social or welfare policies, have 5 main entry points for the impact of social policy in health equity. For the ones who like this matter, this is a start. This model shows that targeting services to deal with poverty-related inequalities in health can be of 5 different types, and this model illustrates that economic inequalities and poverty and otherwise generated inequalities in health concentrate in certain disease groups. So in 2010, the Commission brings to us this final conceptual framework. It shows how social, economic, and political mechanisms give rise to a set of socio-economic positions, where populations are stratified according to income, education, occupation, gender, ethnicity, and other factors. Context is broadly defined to include all social and political mechanisms that generate, configure, and maintain social hierarchies, including the labor market, the educational system, political institutions, and other cultural and societal values. Among the contextual factors that most powerfully affect health are the welfare state and its redistributive policies, or the absence of such policies, like for the matters of education, health, or social protection. In this framework, structural mechanisms are those that generate stratification and social class divisions in the society and that define individual socioeconomic position within hierarchies of power, prestige, and access to resources. Structural mechanisms are rooted in the key institutions and processes of the socio-economic and political context. The most important structural stratifiers and their proxy indicators include income, education, occupation, social class, gender, and ethnicity, as we already said. Together, context, structural mechanisms, and the resultant socioeconomic position of individuals are structural determinants. And in effect, it is these determinants we refer to as the social determinants of health inequities. The underlying social determinants of health inequities operate through a set of intermediary determinants of health to shape health outcomes. The vocabulary of structural determinants and intermediary determinants underscores the causal priority of the structural factors. The main categories of intermediary determinants of health are material circumstances, which include factors such as housing and neighborhood quality, consumption potential, and the physical work environment. Psychosocial circumstances, which include psychosocial stressors, stressful living circumstances and relationships, and social support and coping styles. And behavioral and biological factors, which include nutrition, physical activity, tobacco consumption, and alcohol consumption, which are distributed differently among different social groups. Biological factors also include genetic factors, which account for the 15 to 30% about how we age. Also, this framework takes into account the health system itself as a social determinant of health. The role of the health system becomes particularly relevant through the issue of access, which incorporates differences in exposure and vulnerability, and through intersectoral action led from within the health sector. The health system plays an important role in mediating the differential consequences of illness in people's lives. We can see in this framework that any bad decision or any insufficient action in any of these structural or intermediate determinants would mean worse results in health. The following list provides examples of the social determinants of health, which can influence health equity in positive and negative ways: income and social protection, education, unemployment and job insecurity, working life conditions, food insecurity, housing, basic amenities and the environment, early childhood development, social inclusion and non-discrimination or ageism, structural conflict, access to affordable health services, or decent quality. Research shows that the social determinants can be more important than healthcare or lifestyle choices in influencing health. For example, numerous studies suggest that social determinants of health account for between 30 to 55% of health outcomes. In addition, estimates show that the contribution of sectors outside health to population health outcomes exceeds the contribution for the health sector itself. Addressing social determinants of health appropriately is fundamental for improving health and reducing long-standing inequities in health, which requires action by all sectors and civil society. Now, how all these impacts in old age? First, we have to say that with the increase in life expectancy and the increase of older people, there are some explanations. For example, increases in life expectancy could be explained by the improvements in nutrition among children and younger adults. Also, by the efforts in public health, reducing the incidence of infectious illnesses. These efforts were made over the first part of the 20th century, and life expectancy began to increase from about the 1970s, perhaps because of improvements in medical care, or perhaps as a result of living in healthier conditions during early life. This phenomenon of an aging population has led to policy concerns about the potential impact of changing dependency ratios and increasing disability trends on health and social services. But in addition to changes in the age structure of the population, the dynamics of aging appear also to be changing. For example, the compression of morbidity hypothesis predicts that levels of morbidity are falling more rapidly than mortality, resulting in an older but healthier population. So a new concept was emerged, successful aging, as a response to traditional stereotypes of aging as associated with inevitable sickness and decline. However, we all know here that the experience of healthy aging is not uniform. How is this true? Well, this is a graph of female and male life expectancy at birth in years, and we watch in wonder as life expectancy and good health continue to increase in parts of the world like Japan or Europe, and in alarm as there are parts of the world like in South Africa where they fail to improve. A girl born today in Japan or Europe can expect to live for more than 80 years, but a boy born today in Lesotho can only expect to live less than 50 years. Within countries, there are dramatic differences in health that are closely linked with the degrees of social disadvantage. These differences of this magnitude within and between countries simply should never happen. This is a graph from the Dunedin study. Dunedin is a city in New Zealand. They have followed a birth cohort of young adults born in 1972, and they have tracked 1,000 people from birth. In this publication from 2015, they show their findings over 12 years, from ages 26 to 38, and observed systematic changes in 18 biomarkers of risk for age-related chronic diseases that was consistent with age-dependent decline. So the chronologically age was 38 years old, but some of them had a biological age of 28 years old, and others had a biological age of 61 years old. Then some members were biologically older than others. Also, last year it was published their last assessment. It was made to these people when they were 45 years old in 2019. They have found that, as they call, the pace of biological aging is different between them, and there is a slow pace, an average pace, and they describe a fast pace of biological aging. So people with an older biological age are people described as with having a fast pace of biological aging. And people with a slow pace are younger, are people with a younger biological age. So here it comes our dilemma. The crucial policy question: which sections of the older population will live healthy, active lives, and which will be dependent, and with what resources, or under what resources? From now on, we are going to review some structural determinants and how they impact in the elderly. And for this matter, I want you to know that 20 days ago, 60 geriatricians from Latin America were attending this course. It was a course made by the Latin American Academy of the Older Person Medicine. Here are some pictures I wanted to share with you. We were just learning and discussing about the social determinants of health in older age. Let's start with education. The most consistent relationship among studies is that years of education are inversely related to physical disability in older age in both cross-sectional and longitudinal studies. Also, there is consistent evidence that with more years of education, there is a decrease in the risk of dementia. There is a 7% decrease in the risk of dementia for each additional extra year of education. In this graph, we can see a lifespan developmental model for a relationship between education and dementia. And it shows how if one has parents with a better socioeconomic position, probably that one person will have a better brain development and more years of education. A better brain development eventually and more years of education eventually will means that this one person will make better decisions in their future and it will decrease the risk of dementia. Now, about occupation, there are cross-sectional studies in Britain and mainland Europe that have documented relationships between occupational class and self-reported health and reported physical disability. The studies have shown that occupational grade strongly predicted functioning in older age. However, some of the findings in this matter are that education, occupation, and social activities are associated with the risk of cognitive impairment. An occupation with higher intellectual requirements can help keep cognitive functions intact for longer, and that greater midlife cognitive activity was associated with a 26% risk reduction for dementia onset. Also, midlife cognitive and physical activities are independently associated with reduced risk of dementia and dementia subtypes. Relationships between social environment variables and cognitive decline and dementia, and increased engagement in social, physical, or intellectual pursuits were related to a decreased risk of dementia. What about income and wealth? In European countries, lower income has generally been shown to accompany worse health outcomes in older age. In North America, several cross-sectional studies have found household income to be positively associated with functioning. In addition, many American longitudinal studies have shown relationships between income and later life functioning. In a 10-year follow-up in the US National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey, lower family income predicted onset of disability, but only for men. So, in these last 4 slides, some studies reviewed here suggest continuing socioeconomic inequalities in health and functioning into older ages. This evidence documents structural inequalities based on years of education, occupation, class, and income. It looks like the most important determinant of health status in later life is education, probably in the establishment of subsequent social and economic trajectories, but also potentially through the promotion of healthy behaviors and by increasing options for dealing with ill health and stress. As we have seen, if someone has more years of education and a complex occupation, probably will have a higher socio-economic position and therefore a better health. So to this point, we have seen some aspects of structural determinants. Now we are going to review some aspects of the intermediary determinants. The exact relationship between material circumstances and health has long been debated. Lack of resources may lead to poor health outcomes through a number of pathways, some related directly to the ability to afford health-promoting goods, such as high-quality healthcare or nutritious food, high-quality housing or access to good neighborhoods, others relating to the sense of security that access to economic resources may bring. And also, there is a bidirectional relationship from material resources, meaning better health, but also if I have a better health, I could access to material resources. As physical and mental decline, old age is traditionally portrayed as a time of economic decline. This could be a stereotype. There are large inequalities in the distribution of income from pensions, and for older people on low incomes, poverty tends to be persistent rather than temporary. And few will have access to the labor market to add to their incomes. Compared with income, wealth gives a better measure of access to resources. It also provides information on the accumulated sum of past saving and borrowing. It can provide a good measure of lifetime living standards. Studies have shown that inequalities in wealth amongst the older population are very pronounced. Average wealth is driven by a small number of very wealthy individuals, and a considerable number of individuals, particularly single people, single men or women, and mostly single men, report having very little non-pension wealth. Now, about health behavior and health. According to some authors, healthy behavior is the true route to successful aging. How one ages is determined mostly by the lifestyle choices of individuals. However, health behavior is known to be influenced by social position, culture, and financial constraints. People at high risk may die before reaching old age, and habits may change. For instance, the prevalence of smoking typically declines with age. There also appear to be socioeconomic differences in smoking, physical activity, and alcohol consumption in older age. Also, women were more likely than men to be sedentary. Low levels of income and education were associated with smoking, being a non-drinker, and being sedentary. In older age, health behaviors are also known to be associated with health outcomes. For example, a systematic review of risk factors for functional decline identified smoking, low levels of physical activity, and no alcohol consumption as among the most important factors. Physical activity has been shown to have protective effects against several chronic physical and mental illnesses. Finally, to speak about psychosocial factors that impact in older age, there is the existence of ageism. On March 2021, the Global Report on Ageism was launched by the World Health Organization and the United Nations. Ageism is a cultural construction about how we think, feel, and act towards age and aging. Changing this is a prerequisite for successful action in healthy aging and for progress of the decade of healthy aging. Combating ageism is one of the 4 action areas of the decade of healthy aging. In addition to education, retirement stands out as a key period of transition when thinking about social determinants of health in older age. High rates for inactivity are found for both the wealthiest individuals and for those in the lowest wealth groups. The nature of one's labor market exit appears to be linked with subsequent health outcomes. Perceived social status is an important explanatory factor in inequalities in health, but also some analyses show that the likelihood of reporting good health increased with a better perceived social status. About social support, there is considerable evidence showing that beneficial health effects of social relations. Also, social engagement has been shown to have a direct effect in maintaining cognitive function in older age. In addition to its protective effect in preventing illness, social support appears to be helpful in coping with the stress of a chronic illness. One study found higher income and education to be associated with larger social networks and more contact with networks members. Higher levels of perceived social support were associated with higher social position. Of course, the form and quality of support are important. For instance, close relationships can have negative as well as positive aspects. For older adults, social determinants of health, such as access to housing, food, financial resources, and transportation options, as well as social connections, play a critical role not only in better health outcomes, but also in improving overall well-being. Evidence shows that health inequalities continue in older age, regardless of which measure of socioeconomic circumstances is used. Now, our comments on what to do next. On October 2011, or since October 2011, invited by the WHO, heads of government, ministers, and government representatives came together in Rio de Janeiro to express their determination to achieve social and health equity through action on social determinants of health and well-being. By that time, it was understandable that health equity is a shared responsibility and requires the engagement of all sectors of government, of all segments of society, and of all members of the international community in an all for equity and health for all global action. It was a recognition that governments have a responsibility for the health of their peoples, which can be fulfilled only by the provision of adequate health and social measures, and that national efforts need to be supported by an enabling international environment. Also, this political declaration was a reaffirmation that health inequities within and between countries are politically, socially, and economically unacceptable, as well as unfair and largely avoidable, and that the promotion of health equity is essential to a sustainable development and to a better quality of life and well-being for all, which in turn can contribute to peace and security. After this, the Sustainable Development Goals, also known as the Global Goals, were adopted by the United Nations in 2015 as a universal call to action to end poverty, protect the planet, and ensure that by the 2030, all people enjoy peace and prosperity. These 17 global goals are integrated. They recognize that action in one area will affect outcomes in others, and that development must balance social, economic, and environmental sustainability. 3 regional WHO commissions on social determinants and health equity have been undertaken in the past decade in Europe, in the Americas, and in the Eastern Mediterranean to provide more specific guidance to countries in these regions. Many countries have made progress in implementing these approaches. The COVID-19 pandemic brought to us more issues to think about. Like the WHO said at its beginning, it will take the best and the worst of each one of us. So first, inequalities in the social determinants of health have been unmasked. But secondly, the pandemic have inequally impacted on the social determinants of health themselves. And thirdly, the pandemic produced a further exacerbation of health inequities, such as infection, hospitalization, and mortality. These unacceptable and unjust outcomes highlight the need to take greater account of social determinants of health in pandemic preparedness and response efforts, including for the rest of the current COVID-19 pandemic. Then a social determinants approach should be integrated into pandemic prevention, preparedness, response, and recovery. In conclusion, a sustained collaborative approach is needed that reaches across health, social, and economic factors. Across communities and countries, with health and social justice at its core, to manage the current pandemic and build back a future to ensure future outbreaks. Finally, let's remember that people living longer is something to celebrate. There is much work to be done in reducing health inequalities. We have the instruments for action. Let us all here play a political role. This is an opportunity for our generation to be active in this global effort. The decade of healthy aging has already begun, and we all here know what to do. As conclusions, social determinants of health are known medical factors that influence health outcomes. Health is a social phenomenon, a topic of social justice. Health equity becomes a guiding principle. The state is the primary responsible duty bearer. We need long-term detailed longitudinal studies of individuals, in particular for policy purposes. Longitudinal data will allow us to examine whether and how these changes will impact health outcomes in older age. It also will allow researchers to better address questions regarding the importance of socioeconomic circumstances in earlier and later life on health outcomes in older age. Dignity and security is the least we can ask for, but we can't stay with that. Society must have elderly people with purpose, leading their own processes, like pension, social protection, health system needs, and end-of-life decisions, among others. So this is my call for action. Let us all here, let us all play a political role from now on. And let us recognize that the social determinants of health are the most important issue in this century for taking down the health inequities. Thank you all for listening. And here is my personal contact information. I'm feeling very proud now of this opportunity to participate in this World Congress. Thank you all.
Your conference was very interesting. Ha sido muy interesante tu conferencia, Javier. Thank you very much for your presentation. Muchas gracias por tu presentación. Bueno, tenemos una pregunta que no la estoy viendo. Bueno, mientras tanto te voy a pedir unas palabras sobre el Día del Abuso y Maltrato en la Vejez, que es el día de hoy justamente. Así que traduzco. I want to you say a few words about Elder Abuse and Maltreat Awareness Day.
Okay, thank you, Margarita. Gracias, Margarita. Voy a dar la respuesta en español. Bueno, hoy se conmemora el Día Internacional de Toma de Conciencia en contra del abuso, del maltrato de las personas mayores. La Asociación Colombiana de Gerontología y Geriatría está unida a esta campaña mundial y esto pues ha sido declarado por la Asamblea General de las Naciones Unidas, así que todo el mundo debe estar alrededor de esta campaña el día de hoy. Nosotros, al igual que muchas personas en el mundo, expresamos nuestra oposición a cualquier tipo de discriminación, abusos, maltrato y sufrimientos ocasionados directa o indirectamente a las personas mayores. El maltrato a una persona mayor pues es algo que no debe darse. Sin embargo, del 4 al 6% de las personas mayores en el mundo ha sufrido algún tipo de violencia. Esto pues sabemos que está subregistrado y que está subintervenido y que es necesario que actores del sector como nosotros estemos todo el tiempo, digamos, pendientes de ver qué acciones o sobre qué acciones podemos implementar para disminuir este problema de salud pública que a la final pues se ha convertido en el último par de años en un determinante social de la salud o se ha destacado como uno de los determinantes sociales de la salud. Entonces, debemos erradicar pues lo que es el edadismo, porque esto pues es una construcción cultural y no va a ser fácil porque para esto tendríamos que, digamos, pasar por lo menos una generación con el fin de cambiarle ese chip cultural a la nueva generación y que logremos cambiar la forma cómo nosotros vemos, cómo nosotros sentimos y cómo actuamos frente a la vejez y frente al envejecimiento. Entonces, en resumen, pues lo que tenemos que hacer es aprovechar este conocimiento que estamos recibiendo en estos eventos tan importantes a nivel mundial para volver a decirle al mundo que es necesario que actuemos frente a esta situación y que empezando por nosotros mismos, por nuestras familias y por la educación a las generaciones venideras, logremos que esto vaya cambiando.
Muchas gracias. Aquí tenemos una pregunta que dice, perhaps countries need a education program to help an aging in the school education programs directed to all the education cycle, since little children until secondary students. What do you think about it?
I agree. We need education for our children about the older person, about how they can age better, how they can accomplish a better ageism, a better aging. because sometimes the lack of education will mean a worse behavioral and a worse lifestyle decisions. And so when the human mind has the tools or has the instruments to a better aging, so they will implement this throughout life and throughout the courses of life. In Brazil, there is a they have implemented a space in the education for children to know about how to treat the older person, how to communicate with them, and how they can access to a better aging process. But the only country that I have known in Latin America about this, or from I have heard this type of experience, is from Brazil. In Colombia, we don't have this. There are some efforts. We know we have to include or call the Ministry of Education for this matter, and those are actions that we have to pursue, because if any of us don't look for these decision makers, so this wouldn't happen. This will never happen. So our call for action is that we have to look for these decision makers in our countries, and to find the possibility of including education about aging and old age in the children, and also to sensibilize people that education is the best or the more powerful tool to achieve a better health in the older ages. Thank you for that question.
Bueno, de nuevo, muchas gracias. Thank you very much. Gracias, nos vamos.
Thank you. Gracias.